Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here is your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Good morning and happy Sunday morning to you. Thanks for joining us again for Faith in Our Hometown this morning. It's good to have you with us on a Sunday morning as we discuss things of interest to us, especially as people of faith in the greater Joplin area. And so my guest this morning is going to be a woman that I met at a little gathering over in Galena. So we got somebody from the Kansas side. For so all you Kansas folks, you just keep watching and you just keep sending me folks that we can kind of talk to some of the folks from the western side of the border. But my guest this morning is going to be Tammy Costlow, who works with CLASS, and CLASS is an organization that works with folks with developmental disabilities. We're going to talk a little bit about this in a little bit, but the number of people who are kind of classified as having some disabilities continues to grow a little bit. And so we as communities who want to welcome those people need to figure out how we do that more effectively. So we're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute. Stick around and we'll be right back with Tammy to talk a little bit about developmental disabilities with folks in our area.
Breast density is when you have more fibrous tissue and glandular tissue in your breast than fat. And so we are hearing more about dense breasts because, number one, it's a law that we tell women that they have dense breasts. We've known about dense breasts in the medical community for many years. But that's the difference. You know, there are some women who are very fatty replaced, have very fatty replaced breasts, and there are some women who have very dense breasts, meaning they have more fibroglandular tissue in that breast and less fat, therefore making it a little fuzzy on mammograms. So women with dense breasts have a modestly increased risk for breast cancer. However, it's not substantially increased. We have to just be more vigilant.
Well, again, thanks for joining us for another Sunday morning for Faith in Our Hometown. My guest this morning, Tammy Costlow, who is with CLASS. So Tammy, tell us a little bit about yourself and then tell us a little bit about CLASS.
My name is, like you said, Tammy Costlow. I'm from the Baxter area. I work in the Columbus office, which is our administrative office at CLASS. We work in 4 different counties: Labette, Crawford, Cherokee, and Montgomery counties. We do provide services to people with developmental and intellectual disabilities. We have been in operation since 1976.
Wow.
And I have been there for 25 years.
Oh, wow, congratulations. Good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, to work in that field for a long time. Lots changed in the mental health field in those 25 years,
Correct.
At least in terms of what we recognize and how we can help.
Correct.
In those ways. Tammy and I met at, we were invited both to a little celebration by one of the women, young women from Galena, and she wanted to invite us to a little special celebration that she holds every year because she had had some difficulty relating to some of the folks in her area, and they didn't quite know how to help her. I think everybody wanted to help, but didn't know how to make it happen. And so one of the things she started doing was having this gathering so that everybody could get together and just learn how to be more comfortable with each other. And so that's where we met, and I just said, "Well, come on and let's talk about this a little bit." And so I'm glad you did.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit more about. So CLASS just works with both developmental and mental disabilities.
Yes.
So how would you classify those? So how, for folks out there that aren't used to the language and aren't used to that groups of people that you work with, what would be the types of people that you work with in that category, those categories?
Up until recently, the folks that we supported were diagnosed with what they used to call mental retardation. It is now intellectual and developmental disabilities. We work with folks with autism. We work with folks with cerebral palsy. We work with people that have all different various levels of developmental disabilities and diagnoses.
Yeah. So that runs a very large spectrum of lots of
Correct.
different people that you work with. And again, some of those, I think one of the things that for many of our viewers perhaps is they might meet someone who strikes them as a little bit different, or they know that there's something there that's just that they're relating a little differently than they would normally do it. And a lot of times that ends up frightening feelings for folks who meet those folks. What advice would you give to folks who are working with those folks in our community?
My best advice is for folks to, when they're in the community and they happen to see folks that might be struggling or appear to be a little bit different, is to first of all put yourself in their shoes. People that have traumatic brain injury may have been born without any type of disability whatsoever, may have been in a horrible car accident or something to that nature, and as a result, their lives have changed overnight. Don't assume that the person actually is not able to understand or receive the language that you're talking to them, even if they're not able to use words to speak. A lot of times the folks that we support are able to really understand what a person is saying to them or how they're interacting with them. However, they have trouble voicing what they are trying to communicate to the other person, and they may use behavior as their communication.
Yeah.
For example, a lot of times you will go to, let's say, a local store such as Walmart, and you might see a child that is having what some would call a fit, a temper tantrum, or even a meltdown. According to the CDC, in April of 2018, the prevalence of autism has went to 1 in 59 people.
Wow.
And so as a result, when you're in Walmart, it may be that that is a child that actually has a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. And they might not actually be having what we call a fit or a temper tantrum. It may be that they're overstimulated from all of the lights and all of the sounds.
And all the people and all those things.
Correct. So many things, external things are happening, and it may be just overwhelming to them. So some folks with autism might have what we would call a meltdown in a store because of all of those external factors. And so it's real important to consider that because I can't tell you how many times I have done some case management with some families, and that's one of their biggest fears, that they will keep their child home as a result of that temper tantrum. Because of how people look at them, they think, why isn't that parent disciplining that child? Actually, discipline at that point in time might actually make matters worse.
Yeah.
And so it's real important that we step back and just consider, is that a child that might need have just a little extra support needs that they have?
Sure. It's interesting, of course, when you go through training as, a seminarian or a person studying to be a priest, you get put out in all kinds of, situations because, they really, in so many ways, want us to learn how to deal with folks who, that we just have never experienced before.
Correct.
If you've not had somebody like that in your family, and then all of a sudden, you're talking to somebody and saying, well, why aren't they responding to me in the way that all my family members do? And it's a lack of experience that in so many ways makes those uncomfortable moments for us.
Correct.
Sometimes, because we're just taught to just go wait on in and we'll figure it out, somewhere along the way. But I think that we need to figure out ways for that to happen a little bit more effectively in our community.
Correct.
Yeah.
What is most important also to remember is that folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities want the same lives that everyone does.
Sure.
They want to be healthy and safe on their own terms. They want to be able to have the things that are important to them in their life on a daily basis. It may be belongings, it may be a certain food, it may be certain people. They want to be able to experience life. They want to be able to do things that everyone in the community does. They also want to have their own dreams and journeys. And so what's really important is to realize that just because they may not be able to use words to speak, or maybe they're in a wheelchair, that doesn't necessarily mean that we should treat them any different, because they have the exact same desires in life that everyone else does.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the basic things that humanity needs to make sure that we don't lose sight of, is that empathy. That basically says, how do I feel along with this person? How do I, I can't be that person, but how do I feel along with that person in terms of just developing some things like, well, what would it be like if, I couldn't get out of a chair? Or what would it be like if I couldn't express all my thoughts verbally. I mean, most of my friends would say I'd go absolutely crazy if I could not, express myself verbally. I mean, that's one of my big things, and I've done that ever since I was little. But what would happen if there was something there that made that a challenge for me, and yet I wanted to get all those thoughts out, or I wanted to communicate those things and I couldn't? And that's what always makes, I just I always want to, say that's where I want to develop that sense of empathy so that I can feel along with that person and do whatever I can in order to help that rather than to hurt it.
Correct.
So what kind of what advice, Ken, would you give to somebody when they meet somebody that this does not, that it seems strange for them to interact with?
Talk directly to the person, even if they do not use words to speak, and if they have a family member with them or their support staff that may be hired and paid to take care of them. Speak to the person, not the person that's providing the supports.
Right.
That other person will step in if it means that they need to help communicate for the person. Allow time for that person to process what you're saying.
Sure.
Some of the folks that we support, due to various levels of disability, may have difficulty processing, but it may be just a matter of you being patient and waiting just a few minutes for them to be able to process what you're saying before they interact with you. Some folks are very literal thinkers. For example, we have one person that I was supporting that's when he went to go play ball, they told him to run home. He took off out of the park. He was going to head home.
Right.
And so sometimes just the things that we say may have an impact on how they communicate back with us if they have some type of IDD diagnosis.
Well, now, did they catch him before he actually made it
Yes,
out of the
they
park?
did.
Good.
Yes,
I'm
they
glad,
did.
because that would have been, yeah. Because all they were trying to do is get him to go from third base to home base, and score the run. Yeah, interesting. Well, I do think that, sometimes that coaching in terms of being able to communicate is such an important thing. And I'm grateful, when folks, were patient with me, and especially the folks that I was learning how to communicate with who might have, some processing issues or whatever. It makes it more possible for us to do that because somebody was successful in coaching me along the way to say, just, wait for a response, or if that doesn't work, you might try again ask a different way,
Correct.
Those kinds of things. And I was just always been grateful for the professionals that I worked with, that just taught me how to do some of those things along the way.
Correct.
And
sometimes interactions, a lot of the folks that we support will have kind of different spectrums as to how much they want you in their space. So some folks will want you at arm's length. So if you get too close to them, they might actually tap you on the arm or communicate in some way that you're in their space if they're not able to tell you. Other folks want to come up and immediately give you a hug. And so, a lot of times I will say, is it okay if I give them a hug and hug them back? If it's that they're going through some type of training where they're trying to learn their own personal space, that person's supporting them, whether it be their mom or dad or brother, sister, or paid support, they might actually communicate with you that, let's maintain our space. And at that time, you know that you probably shouldn't go ahead and engage in a hug with a stranger.
I chuckle because we got one young woman. Well, she's really not even all that young anymore, but she's, she loves people, and when she gets to know them, she trusts them, and so she wants to give them a hug. And so she'll grab me and she'll say, "I love you, Father Jay," and then she'll just hold on to me. And every once in a while, Mom will have to say, "Okay, you had your hug. Now let's let go. Let Father Jay go. No, it's good. You can talk to everybody else in line and all the rest of the parishioners." But I wouldn't trade some of those for anything in the world. At any rate, we're talking with Tammy Costlow from class. This is Faith in Our Hometown. We're going to be right back to talk about disabilities right after this quick break.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
Again, thanks for being with us for another Sunday morning of Faith in Our Hometown. My guest this morning, Tammy Costlow from class. which is an organization that provides services to those with developmental, I can't talk this morning, difficulties. I'm having speech difficulties this morning. But
and I got choked up.
there you go. Well, so in terms of the services and things that you provide, for example, what is your office? What are the folks in your office who do for some of these folks?
We are, like I said, we are a service provider for a multitude of intellectual and developmental disabilities. CLASS specifically provides supports residentially, which means that we are able to support folks in their home. So if they live in an apartment, they may live in a group home, they may live actually with a family that has chosen to contract with CLASS to provide supports to that person in their family home, so they have that community base and they get out quite a bit, go on vacations with the family, those types of things. So that we do have that residential services. We also have day services, which is where folks might have a job in the community and we support them in the community in their employment. They might be actually training to go to work in the community, or we may be trying to look at their strengths and their skills and see what would be a really good fit to employ folks with IDD in the field. We also provide case management services, and that is the department for which I am the vice president for. And that's when we go out into the homes and we actually have conversations with the family, find out what the family strengths are, find out what's important to the person and their family and how we need to know to support them. We talk about what is a vision for a good life for them. What does that look like? Because we don't want to make the assumption that they automatically have to have services. It may be that the family may just need some guidance into how to access those resources. And then we talk about, which is really an easier conversation for families to have, is when they can tell us what they don't want in their life. What would make them have a bad life. So when we talk about inclusion into the community, what tends to happen is well-meaning professionals automatically assume that people want those paid services, when we need to be looking at what is available in the community to them already. For example, a person might be very interested in bowling. Right now, in our mindset, because of all of the years that we've been kind of trained to segregate people with developmental disabilities, we may automatically go, oh, there's Special Olympics, event, and we'll have that person attend that. That is good and great. We love Special Olympics. A lot of folks, that means so much to them to get that medal at the end. But we also want to look at what is a bowling league available to them in their community that they can actually participate in and be a part of that community if that's so important to them. So that's the kind of trajectory that we want for the folks that we support, is what does that good life look like, so that they make those connections in the community. Because paid services may not always be there. We all know that with budget cuts and those types of things, a lot of times services will get cut. If we don't establish those relationships in the community and help folks become more included in their community, we lose those supports for that person. They tend to be more isolated, not get out of the family home, that type of thing. And so therefore, they don't have that. What happens with isolation with all of us is that people become more depressed. And their mental health becomes an issue as well. They may actually have to have more medications as a result. So we're not doing anybody any favors by not being more inclusive in our communities. We also look at all of those areas. What does the person have themselves? Can they ride a bike rather than actually someone driving them around, or can they have the driver's license? We look at what assistive technology might be out there to help them live a more independent life in the community. And we look at community resources. If it's important to the person to be involved in their church, what kind of activities can they be more involved in the church, and actually have the church members pick them up and take them rather than a paid support. So it's just a better way of providing supports to that person rather than depending only on the family and paid supports, which actually is paid through tax dollars usually.
Interesting. So, I mean, you'll just basically go in and help a family or an individual to assess what's the best approach for them.
Correct.
In terms of making what they want work out.
Right. And then we put it in, because of we have federal regulations, we actually develop what we call a person-centered support plan for that person. And it is focused on the person and the family as to what they might need. And we develop goals for them to start working on that vision for that good life and where can we get there. And then after that, the case manager usually monitors and follows up and makes any referrals to resources that they may need.
Yeah. So how big of a staff do you all have, for example, at class?
I believe we have right around 150 employees.
Wow, yeah, so you're a pretty big organization.
Yes.
And again, that 4 counties over just right across, right across the border there.
Correct.
Yeah. So, so in terms of that, in terms of the people who help, or in terms of the people who might need or want your services, how would they get in touch with you?
They can call the office there in Columbus, and they can connect you to the actual eligibility services that coordinate the services for folks. That is 620-429-1212. And they can connect you to what we call the Community Developmental Disability Organization of Southeast Kansas, or the CDDO. They would come out and they would do an eligibility assessment to see if the person does qualify for case management or other services. Currently in the state of Kansas, we have a huge waiting list.
Oh, wow.
People are having to wait 8 years or more for services.
Wow.
And that's why it's so important that we do rely on our community members and
sure. Because if they're waiting, and you've got 130 employees, but they're still waiting 8 years.
Correct.
And that tells everybody, how many people are out there who are seeking some assistance or seeking some service from organizations like yours.
Now, they do not have to wait on case management services if they are eligible.
Okay. So you just said 620-429?
1212.
1212. Okay. So if you know of anyone, or you yourself might be interested in receiving some of that, assistance, you might call and find out about eligibility and all those things that might be able to assist.
Correct.
And again, I know there's a great network, but every once in a while, I'm still surprised that somebody who's listening, find somebody that might be falling through the cracks. And so do that. And I'm assuming, I managed to meet you and visit with you, and you're on the west side of the state line. Okay, you're on the Kansas side of the state line. But I'm sure that if any of our listeners in Oklahoma and Missouri, Arkansas would also have similar organizations that work in their regions in those areas.
Yes, correct. And
Right.
and even if they call that number and ask for me, Tammy Costlow, I will be able to guide them where they need
Sure.
to go.
And I know anybody in your organization would do that, I'm sure,
Yes.
if you're not around. So that's always important, sometimes just to know where to ask. What could our churches, what could our communities do to be a little bit more sensitive or a little bit more open? How might we bridge some of those gaps out there?
Interesting enough, we are at class, have been lucky enough to secure a grant from the Kansas Council on Developmental Disabilities, and on August 2nd at Pitt State University, the Overman Students Center in the Crimson and Gold Ballroom, we are going to actually host an event that we will pretty much discuss the things that we discussed here in this interview. It is free to attend. You just call that same number to register with Melody, and lunch is provided, snacks are provided. There is no fee to attend that event. The registration starts at 8:30. The event begins at 9 and it ends at 3:30.
Okay, so again, just some way of being able to have some of those conversations with some of those folks who might be interested in helping, but who might do that. And if not that event or not that day, hopefully some other events to be able to do some of those things.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell me, I know that a lot of folks that are in positions like yours, feel a lot of motivation to actually get out there and do their job each day because of the differences that they make. Tell me about some of the recent success stories that you've all had through your work at class that just make you smile and want to do your job every day.
I think probably the most success I have seen is with the new shared living program that is being provided at class. There are a very limited number of shared living providers in the state of Kansas. What is really neat about shared living, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, is that we actually match a family that wants to provide these types of supports in the family home, and we provide we match that with the person that is wanting to receive those services. And so when we have children that are in foster care that want to actually continue to be a part of that family and not move out on their own yet, it's a beautiful way to bridge that gap and transition until they're ready to move out on their own. That is one way that works. Another way is that we've seen some success is that when that person is getting older, we might be able to match that person up with someone that actually might be a nurse or have some type of medical background, so that the supports are more natural and in the home rather than having to go to a nursing home right away. Another thing that we see in that program that is so successful is because they are included in their families, is that I've seen them go on trips, cruises, fishing, camping, those types of things that is more difficult when they're living in a congregate setting of 6 or more people with only a few staff being able to help them. They get out a lot more often. So it's a very successful program.
Great. And, and so even people who might even be thinking, we might be able to do something like that, you'd also be able to call your office or whatever and figure out, whether or not, at least to refer them to whoever might be able to help with those kinds of situations. Again, 620-429-1212. That's CLASS, okay? And my guest again this morning, Tammy Costlow from CLASS, helping people with developmental difficulties. So we're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute. Stick around.
Everyone on board dreamed of a new life in America. The Sisters of Mercy had a different dream: to serve all who had need. From the first hospital Sister Frances Ward built to the world's first virtual care center, we continue to answer the same call: to bring mercy home to you. Mercy, in every era, your life is our life's work. Learn why we serve at mercy.net/legacy. A new baby changes the world and each of us. The Sisters of Mercy devoted themselves to offering exceptional maternity and delivery care, training generations of nurses to do the same. Mercy continues to answer the same call: to not only care for your baby, but to cherish them too. Mercy, in every era, your life is our life's work. Learn why we serve at mercy.net/legacy.
Well, thanks for sticking with us again for another Sunday morning on Faith in Our Hometown. I'm always just edified when I meet some of you out in the community and you say, hey, we watch your show. And sometimes by being out in the community is what gives us the ideas for some of these shows. This morning, our show on people with developmental difficulties, and how do we assist those folks. There are organizations here in our community who help to do that, but ourselves as those faith communities and as individuals who care, our job is to try to help to bridge those gaps as well. And so learning how to engage with folks who might struggle, learning how as a community to welcome those folks, to get the coaching that we might happen to need if we need some coaching to make it happen. All those things are pretty essential if we're going to care about the rest of the people in our midst who might sometimes struggle. At any rate, join us next week for Faith in Our Hometown. Again, we hope you have a great Sunday and remain blessed.
Thanks for watching. Faith in Our Hometown can be seen Sunday mornings at 6:30 and 9 a.m. on KSN. Brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.